Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear us and see us.
I still got nothing in my end. Ooh, my voice went weird.
So
Nothing
much for that
here.
humidifier.
Yeah, it's because it's cancer, man. I'm telling you.
Damn. Right, I can see it on my end.
Not here. Oh wait, there it goes. Mute. Put my video quality down.
I should test my mic. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Looking a little yellow today, but it's all right.
I should test my mic. Testing 1, 2, 3. There's nothing I can do about it.
Let me fix my skin tone. Actually, I kind of can, right? Can I
Yeah,
use
you
the
could do it
Logitech?
on your end. Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
I'll tell you what it might be. It might be because my PC now has night light on, or whatever it's called. It makes things a bit warmer. Yep, there you go.
If I gotta wait for it to see it on YouTube, I can't see me, so I don't know if it's better. Is it better or worse?
It looks fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Hard to believe Microsoft Windows turns 35 years old today. Well, I mean, if you look at Windows 10, it's not that hard to believe. That was uncalled for. I'm sorry. Right, I'm ready to go on you on then.
2 more seconds. Oh, now I see it. This looks more pink.
Is that really? Is the stream really that far behind?
Yeah, it's like
a minute.
10, it feels like 10 seconds or 15 seconds maybe. Oh well. I'll just leave that open. Okay, let's see. Bring that up. Bring that up. I am now recording.
I am now recording as well.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, welcome to the Windows Central Podcast, episode 205 for November 20th, 2020. Hey everyone, Dan Rubino here, joined with Zach Bowden for another exciting episode of the Windows Central Podcast. We actually have quite a lot to talk about this week, even though there technically wasn't a ton of news. First of all, Surface Duo and the Xbox Series S, not the X, made Time's best list, which is kind of interesting. Basically, best inventions, which is always kind of fun. Surface has been on there before, but we'll talk a little bit about that. Microsoft Teams for personal use is out on PC. It already come on iOS and Android, but you can now use it on PC. We'll share our brief experience, and we were almost going to use it for this podcast, but yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that. Intel has a new laptop coming out in 2021, although if that sounds weird, don't worry, we'll explain what that actually means. xCloud for PC is finally nearing. Zach, myself, and Jez happen to have this secret client and ability to stream Xbox remotely to our devices. And yes, it works on the Surface Pro X. Literally the only thing I care about is if it works on ARM, because it's such a good device to game on. So we'll talk a little bit about that, what we expect, and the status of it. Some Edge news, of course. So I believe it's Edge Dev, although we need to verify this. Dev definitely does have this. Now has the ability to sync your history and I think obviously bookmarks and basically everything up for the first time. This feature has actually been taking a long time to sync between devices, but it looks like it's finally here. Although when I did try it last night, it kind of didn't work, but that's why we're in dev. And of course, there's a lot more news we'll talk about as well. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about Apple. The reviews for the new MacBooks did come out this week with the M1 processor, and they did live up to the hype. I'm going to do, let's make a pin in that. I'm going to do a little rant editorial at the end a bit about why some of people in our audience are overestimating the impact of this. That's not to take away from how awesome the M1 processor is. I think it's really, really good, and Apple knocked it out of the park. But as to what that means for like Intel, I think we need to take a step back and take a breath, because there's a lot going on there. So let's start off. Well, first of all, Zach, how are you doing? And London, where you may be soon moving away from.
I'm fine. I've had a really busy week looking at places to live. Which I know you said to me that you actually kind of enjoy it. I hate it because it's like you go into a place, you look around, you go, yeah, okay, yeah, there's some rooms, yeah, that's good. And then sometimes it's worse.
So you're looking at apartments?
Apartments,
condos?
Yeah. Apartments.
Okay.
Sometimes it's worse because the previous tenants are still in there. So it's like,
oh, that's weird.
Yeah, that's weird.
I don't like that.
Yeah, it's horrible. And it's like, sorry, guys, I just got to look at the room. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. But yeah.
I've actually, one apartment place I lived at actually just had like dummy rooms.
Yeah. Some places do.
I've seen for a show. And they had like all these, you had like 3 different styles. Yeah. And it was awesome. You just kind of walk in and be like, oh, yeah. Yeah, I like living in apartments because everything is taken care.
I do like apartments as well. I like how like sort of just straightforward they are and stuff. They're really sort of like contemporary as well, which is my kind of aesthetic.
This is actually kind of funny. I don't believe in UFOs or aliens. Like I literally don't think they exist. And if they did, I don't think they'd care much about humans. I think they would look at us as like terrible things. That said, I like the idea of having other humans kind of around so I wouldn't get abducted because no one ever gets like, you never hear those stories of like someone in an apartment complex.
Yeah, in a city, yeah.
It's someone like my sister who lives up like way up in Maine, like where no other humans are. Like those are the people that get abducted, right?
Yeah.
And have these UFO stories, not people in complexes. So I kind of like that safety. On the other hand, I also hate people living that close to me because you hear them.
Yeah.
I don't like hearing them above me. I don't like hearing them next door. So, yeah. But, well, good luck to you on that.
Cheers. So I was asking, am I moving to the US? Not in this pandemic.
No, yeah. Why? Yeah, right now, it's like the US is about to turn into apocalypse now. It's it's pretty crazy out here. But let's get to some, I guess, of the big news here. So, yes, Time. Time magazine, if you're old enough to remember, this is a magazine. And they're still kind of relevant. They still, if you go to the supermarket, they're still there. They do a lot of photo specials. If you're into photography, actually, they're kind of cool. But they did their best inventions of 2020 list. And there's a lot of stuff on there. I haven't gone through it at all, but the only things we kind of care about, of course, is Surface Duo and the Xbox Series S made that list. And that's kind of interesting. I don't believe Fold 2 made it on there from Samsung. Partly, I think that they might have been on there last year, but to be fair, the Fold 2 is just a revision of Fold 1. Yeah. It's not a new invention, so why would it be on there? Surface Duo, I do think makes a lot of sense. And they couched it, the way they wrote it, is exactly how we've been positioning this. They said, quote, "The Surface Duo feels like a concept device, but also a glimpse into the future of mobile computing." Exactly. That's exactly what Surface Duo is today. And we've been saying that for a long time. It's not ready necessarily for mainstream. And they go on, "It won't replace your iPhone and its killer camera just yet, but it's easy to see how it one day might." And exactly, right? There's a lot of potential with this device, and they're kind of basically recognizing the potential of it, which is very different from saying, go out and buy it right now. So I thought that was kind of cool. Xbox Series S being on there, a little bit weird. We had an internal discussion at Windows Central about why that was versus the Series X, which is a much more powerful device. And Richard Devine, one of our games and Windows editors, made a good point, which the Series X is impressive in terms of performance and hardware, but it's literally just the best stuff crammed into a box with excellent ventilation, where the Series S is actually very small and powerful. Like they had to do a little bit more, I think. We've always talked about this, like the smaller something gets, the more challenging the engineering, challenge is to make that happen in terms of thermals and power and what you can do. And Series S is probably the gaming console a lot of people will buy. And when you combine it with the Xbox Game Pass, which they highlighted as well as being really important, they do make a pretty killer combo for a lot of people, especially at that price point. Still a little bit different, but odd. And also maybe they're just recognizing the overall kind of design of these things, which is still way cooler than PS5. I'll go to my grave with saying that, and that AirPods are forever lame looking. So I thought that was kind of neat. Zach, you have any thoughts of all this?
Not really. I do think the Duo is well deserved because it is a sort of new invention, and well, it's not a new invention, let's be honest, but it's an interesting take on the form factor of a PC that fits in your pocket. I know that's been tried before, but very poorly. The Duo is, I think, the best attempt at it so far, but that doesn't mean it's perfect. You know, like you've seen some of the complaints online about the hardware, specifically the plastic trim cracking and denting quite easily. Yep. The lack of a good camera being a primary concern for most people as well. You know, the hinge, which is, for me, the hinge has held up pretty well. But again, you have also seen some reports that some of them are snapping and whatnot. But that happens. You're always going to get defects in a manufacturing line of devices. That's just how it always is. But I'm very interested in seeing what Microsoft can do with Surface Duo 2, because we've seen them push the limits of the thinness here and whatnot. So the question now to me is, where do they go next? Do they try to keep the thinness and try to innovate around that, or do they give way and make it a little bit thicker to add a camera or a better battery or whatever, and, you know, make it more robust? Because I actually think one of the biggest issues with the Duo is because of that plastic trim. It's not as robust as it could be. Because I don't know if you're a Duo owner, you'll know what I mean when I say, if you look closely at the side of it, you can see that, you know, the fingerprint reader isn't exactly aligned with the trim and all of that stuff, and it's not a perfect built device, in my opinion. Like the glass on the back and front, you can clearly tell just been stuck on. You know, like
they're held on by glue.
Yeah, like
glue is like, it's such a glue's become so. Actually, it always has been with the Surface line. Everything's been glued together, replacing screws, and that's the reason.
And that's bad for repairability in most cases. But like, it's funny on the Duo, because you may not be able to see this on camera, but you can actually like put your fingernail underneath the glass on the back, because they've literally just stuck it on top. There's no attempt to sort of embed it into the trim and whatnot, which you find on other devices. But again, this is a Gen 1 product, right? We're going to see that fit and finish come in the future. So yeah, I'm super excited to see how Microsoft goes about this Duo 2, because there's so many different ways they could do it, because they've got to keep the two screens, we know that, but are they going to make it a bit thicker? Yes. Are they going to add another camera? Are they going to change the trim to metal to fix the USB-C cracking issue and whatever else that people have been complaining about? How are they going to fit 5G antennas in there? There's already no room for it. So all of these questions they need to solve in time for holiday next year.
Yeah, part of my gut tells me, because that 4.8 millimeters, not that companies have never backtracked on design stuff. Apple, you know, we've ragged on Apple a lot, where the iPhone was a perfect size for one-hand usability, so your thumb could touch everything, and now they have the iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is like literally their largest device ever. So, you know, these principles are very easy to go back on. Meanwhile, the iPhone 12 mini, which I'll talk about in a second too, returns basically to that concept. So I could see, you know, Microsoft walking this back a little bit, but it is important to know that Panos was very adamant about it being 4.8 millimeters at its, you know, thickest point, or the display thing. That said, would it kill them to go to 5 millimeters?
Right.
And then it'd be 10 millimeters thick?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, it's one of those things. Panos basically said the way this is designed in terms of its size and its weight, and don't forget its weight distribution. If you never held a Surface Duo, what makes it so impressive is when there's no heavy points to it. It's completely evenly distributed when it's open, and perfectly balanced. And they did that on purpose, obviously, so it doesn't tip over and feel weird on one side. And I feel like they spent a lot of time on that size. So, you know, going back before Duo came out, everybody was like, it's going to be too big for your pockets. You can't carry it. And I quickly dispelled that myth. It's not big at all to carry in your pocket. It's wider than some phones, but it's not too big for a pocket. And they spent a lot of time on this. So it's going to be really interesting, because it is a question, right? If they could go to 5 millimeters, basically improve the resiliency, as you said, of the, you know, the outside areas, as well as maybe add the camera and keep the, you know, extremely good battery life, which is always a surprise on this device. I don't know. It's going to be fun to watch how this product evolves, along with as new technologies that allow them to push it forward. It's going to be kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do with the bezels as well, because I know that's a big issue for a lot of people. As far as I'm aware, the bezels aren't going away. They might be reduced a little bit, but I'm not expecting, like, you know, iPhone 10 style.
It wouldn't make sense either, because if
You
the way
need the
you hold
bezels.
Duo,
Yeah, you do need them.
like you end up holding it with your thumb and your
Yeah.
finger like a book, a little
Hmm.
booklet almost, and that bezel area is perfect for that. But like you said, they could shrink it down a little bit.
Yeah, they will.
I mean, the only way I can think of is, but it would look weird, is keep that bottom bezel a little bit thicker and make the top one thinner, but then you lose the symmetry.
Yeah, so I
And
think
so,
they'll do what they did with the Surface Pro X, where they sort of just they try to make it go to the two edges as far as possible. Because if you look on the Duo now,
yes.
there's a few millimeters of bezel there that they could easily get rid of on the two sides, and then that just makes the screen bigger overall. In the same size device. I don't think they'll change the size of this. I think it'll still be more or less this size. Because I actually really like this size. I think it's unique and it's still pocketable and portable. It's not too cumbersome to use. Yes, it's not a one-handed phone, of course, but it's also
What happened
not.
to your red bumpers?
I took them off. Listen, when the USB-C port started cracking, I was like, look, what's the point at this point? Might as well live it the way it's supposed to be lived.
And you've never put on my matte
So
screen
I
protectors.
tried, and I'm really bad at it, and I just didn't. It was horrible. It was a really bad application.
Did you get dust underneath the screen?
Yeah.
So did you do my trick?
Yeah, I did, but I'm just really bad at it.
So for those who don't know, if you're listening to this, I've talked about this in the past, but the trick to putting on a screen protector is to do it in your bathroom. And that sounds weird, but hear me out. Basically, go into your bathroom, put on the shower, run it, and run the steam in there for 5 minutes. The steam is going to pull all the dust out of the air. Obviously, don't run your fan if you have a fan in your bathroom. Or if you have AC or something that's circulating, make sure it's off. We'll let the steam take the dust out of the air. You want the steam to kind of clear out too, because you don't want moisture on your screen. That's a pain. But let that happen. And then go in, use tape. Tape is a big thing also to position it. Tape the bottom half of it, so line it up perfectly, and then tape the bottom half. And then you just peel off the back, and then you just let it flop down, basically. You do that, I guarantee you're going to have at least a much better experience with it. I'm actually tempted to take mine off because it's been so long since I've been using the Surface Pro X SQ2 without my matte screen protector. And I've been actually okay with it, And I'm using, obviously, the iPhone without a screen protector right now. And I'm okay with that. So I'm kind of curious about going back to see.
Yeah.
That said, the matte screen protector is very good at hiding fingerprints.
Right. That's why I tried to put it on. I was getting tired of the fingerprints, but I completely messed up the application. I just thought, you know what? I gave up, and I frustratingly ripped it off and threw it in the bin. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Let's quickly talk about the update that came out last week for Surface Duo. So one of the things I've noticed that's really improved is the camera.
Yes.
Not in terms of performance, which I think was actually highlighted in the notes for it. I haven't noticed. It's not any worse, but it's hard to say if it's any better. But the thing that's really improved is the ability to launch the camera, flip the display back, and switch screens so you can use it as a regular camera. That was always a little tricky with the movements, the gyroscope, and sometimes it wouldn't switch. But I've noticed now, it's very consistent with switching to the proper screen and going to the right camera mode now. It does it almost every single time, which is great. It's also faster when it does that. It's very quick now. And I found that to be really nice. Performance is definitely very good now. That is animations. We've talked about that before. It used to sort of like drop frame rates for the animations, which made it look a little janky. But now everything it's very quick on here. Like the memory optimization is better. Things are faster and smoother for the gestures. My stability has been great too. It's getting better. And one thing I pointed out in my review that they fixed, and you knew this was coming, and we didn't talk about it, was Edge.
Yes.
So Edge had this problem where basically if you were using Edge and then you minimized it, say you closed your phone and you came back to it like an hour later and you launched Edge, you would hit the button, and you can see this in my video review. You would hit the button and it would be like 5 to 6 seconds before Edge would relaunch. And it was an issue with, I guess, some of the APIs Edge was using, which was more compatible with older Android builds. And then Microsoft basically had to fork them so that they can use the newer APIs. So the Duo now apparently is getting this updated version, because I have not noticed that problem at all now. Now Edge always launches right when you click it, as you would expect. So they've basically, in my opinion, gone through and sort of fixed a lot of the complaints that were in that original review, and I'll update the we'll be doing a kind of re-review in December on this, probably after the that third update comes out, just to
Yeah.
be a little bit more.
Going back to the camera real quick, I've also noticed that the color accuracy seems to be less washed out in the sort of the first few weeks of the Duo. The camera it seemed like there was like a just lifeless color filter like on the screen on the camera by default. I don't know if anyone else noticed this, but it was definitely on mine. And with this latest update, that appears to be gone, and the photos look much more color accurate now, which I think's a nice improvement as well. I mentioned this last week, but I'll mention it again. Gestures seem to be a lot better. Gestures were awful at launch. They were. But now I have almost little to no issue with them. Sometimes it will misjudge a swipe up as a switch to the other screen. But otherwise, like it's no longer doing that thing where you swipe up and it doesn't swipe up. Like I'm always getting it activated now, which is good. And yeah, Microsoft Launcher has also improved quite a bit. It's much more performant now, much faster. It doesn't lag as much. It really has come along. As I said last week, the Duo was supposed to launch around this time, and if it had, I don't think the reviews would have been nearly as harsh, because it's.
Although they would also say that a lot of the stuff, especially in that first update, were discovered only because more people were using it. Like basically the way, like, a lot of people were complaining of dropped calls, and the theory was it's poor reception.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the case. What it was the sensor was being tripped accidentally and basically hanging up on the person.
Yeah.
And they only discovered that after a lot of people were using it. So I feel like a lot of that stuff is because people are using it. But you're right, some of it is just performance, probably just needed some time. But yeah, they've been updating the launcher, especially for beta, a couple times every week.
Yep.
We don't know, like, no necessarily new features, but it's just small incremental changes. It's still fun. Yeah. And I just want to talk about that for a sec, because I've been using the iPhone 12 mini on the second line. And I really, really like this phone. I think it's kind of awesome. It's made me I just enjoyed the one-handedness, the size. I've told you, it said during the pandemic, I just need like a basic phone kind of.
Yeah.
But it's been running really well. But that said, and it's good. I mean, it's really good in its own right in terms of just a phone for most people. But when I pick up the Duo, it's just a different experience, and there's just a different benefit there, which is Duo is just so good at, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to go into my news and email. It feels more like a cross between a phone and a tablet/laptop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that same experience when you're on an iPhone and you're doing a task and you're like, you know what, let me put this down, let me get my laptop, it's going to be easier. With Duo, you don't feel like you need to do that as much. You feel like you can do whatever you need to do on it. Sure, there is the time you're going to go write a whole paper you want to put down and go to a laptop. With Duo, I always feel like I can stay in it more because of that. And that's really the benefit. So it's as good as the iPhone 12 is, and the camera's been great, all the features, it's been working very well. The Duo, I'm still finding just a different experience and a preferable experience in a lot of ways.
And because the software bugs are being fixed, that UX that Microsoft was specifically trying to sort of advertise in their sort of Surface Duo launch event thing they did, really comes to life now. Because I think it was hard at first to sort of realize it because of all the bugs. But now those bugs are sort of being solved and are more or less out of the way, you can actually really get into your flow without being frustrated. Like as I mentioned at the top of the show, I've been looking for a new place to live. And having two screens, one side is the map for the location of where I'm going, the other side is the details of the property and who I'm meeting and where I'm supposed to go. It's absolutely fantastic.
That's a great
really
point.
Is.
So like the way I use that's a really good point that I wanted to talk about, because I may do an article about this. The way I use Duo is more like a traditional PDA.
Yes.
And if you don't know what a PDA is, it goes way back, right? That was the start of Pocket PCs. And the beauty of a Pocket PC was most of us would turn it on. It would be like your calendar. It would be your email.
Yep.
It was the perfect device for working professionals. And the benefit, the way I have my Duo set up, I can kind of show you. You can't see it. But I have like a calendar on this side. And it's literally all my upcoming appointments, because my life is based on schedules. I have meetings with companies during the week. I have reviewer workshops. I have our own internal meetings. I have my own personal appointments. And it's hard to keep track. And when you're like living through the calendar and also email messaging, when I turn this device on, I can basically get a glimpse and overview what my day is going to be. And that's sort of also what they do with the, this whole thing, of course. They're, what do they call it, the timeline feature, not what's called.
I call it the shelf. I think
feed.
it's called, the activity feed or something. Yeah.
Activity feed or something. And of course, being Android, compared to, again, iPhone's gotten really good. The widget stuff on iOS 14 is kind of cool.
You mean live tiles?
Yeah. I have to admit, but they did like a nice job. Like it makes iOS that much more better, even though we can all laugh at them. But, Android, you can just spend hours. Like I'm running actually custom widgets. Right. There are now apps you can download on Android that let you design your own widgets for basic features. And so when I turn this on, I feel like this is my work device. I turn on, I get my calendar, I can do my email, Slack, Microsoft Teams, messaging. iPhone obviously can do that. You can configure the iPhone to have your calendar. I actually do have the calendar on my screen here as a widget, but it's not as comprehensive. It's not as, you don't get to customize as much. Like I can literally see my appointments for the next week and a half on the way I've configured this. iPhone, it's a lot harder to do. Obviously, though, iOS has a lot of benefits to it, including compatibility with everything, better apps a lot of times than Android. That's funny. There's an app called Weed Maps. Weed Maps, it's literally what it sounds like. It helps you. Oh, hold on. I'm just gonna.
Oh, Dan had to step away for some reason.
No. Just my cat needed to get, so he needed to leave the room. She woke up from her nap. So Weed Maps is exactly what it sounds like. It's for finding marijuana dispensaries. It's legal here in Massachusetts. And they made a widget for iOS 14 already. I was just like, damn, you guys are quick on that. So it's kind of fun to do that. Of course, and the other benefit of Duo is that ability to launch apps at the same time. So I can actually launch Weed Maps with Yelp. So I can order food with my pot. So I don't know. It's cool stuff. They're both great devices, but they're very different. Obviously, the iPhone is that better consumer kind of experience where I definitely feel like the Duo is more of a return to form of a modern PDA. And if that resonates with you, you can even get a belt holster for it. That's the future for that. So it's very kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right. I say we move on to the next topic. Microsoft Teams for personal use rolls out to the web and desktop with 24-hour calling. Zach, walk us through this and about our own experience.
Finally, a version of Teams that I can use. So this is a weird thing. So this is part of the Microsoft Teams for Life thing that was rumored ages ago, earlier this year, that was announced back in, I think, April, and sort of rolled out to phones. Like it was available on Android and iOS, but that was it up until this past week, where Microsoft started rolling out those consumer features to the desktop client as well on Windows and I guess Mac OS and elsewhere. And also the web app, if you go to teams.live.com, you can actually get access to the consumer version of Teams, and it's essentially a stripped back version. It doesn't have the Teams part of Teams. It's just chats with other people, and you can create groups and whatnot. You have an activity feed which still has your calendar in it, and I guess you can create shared calendars with friends and whatnot, which is super fun. And you can share files and whatnot as well, which is great. But it does very much so strip back the Teams client to being a sort of chat-based IM client, and it works really well. Me and Dan did try and use it earlier today because we were going to try and use it to do this show for the podcast. Since we use Skype right now, and on Teams you can also set up NDI streams, which is what we use on Skype. Since Teams is basically Skype anyway, uses the same technology. But when we tried to call each other, it just would not work. I would press the call button, and Dan's phone would ring, but his desktop client wouldn't. And the same happened when he tried to call me. So we had to abandon that plan pretty quickly and go back to Skype. But otherwise, I do like the look. I like the UI of Teams and stuff. I'm not a huge fan of the desktop client being an Electron app. I wish it was React Native or something, but that's besides the point. There is an ARM version of it now, which is super cool. So it runs great on the Surface Pro X, and I've been sort of enjoying it. I don't know about you, Dan.
I haven't really used it at all. So
No.
it's going to be interesting to see if I can kind of switch over to it. I have already Telegram, I have GroupMe, I have Slack.
Yeah, I've got a lot as well. Yeah.
So there's a lot going on there, but obviously there's a kind of a benefit to having teams, especially for like a household, or even if you had like a group of friends that did, for activities every week. It's kind of a way to organize. Of course, GroupMe does it already for a lot of college students. GroupMe, actually, by the way, shout out to them, have added the ability to quote reply to GroupMe, which is pretty awesome. It's actually a
Nice.
really good feature. So GroupMe is still chugging along. They've actually added abilities to plug into universities directly. So that app is still chugging along. But yeah, Teams is going to be interesting. Now, if we can get it work, we'll try it again next week to see the progress there. We're definitely more likely to hopefully use it. But
Yeah. Because I'm trying to get rid of Skype. I don't want to use Skype for anything anymore. But the Skype is really the only reason I still use Skype is for this podcast. So shifting to Teams would be really nice if it works. But yeah, you can download the desktop client now. If you go to teams.live.com, there's a button in the bottom left that you can click on to download the client. I had trouble getting the actual consumer features to show up in the main client. I had to go to teams.live.com, download the client from there. There's seemingly no difference between the downloads, but for some reason downloading it from there actually enabled the consumer features for me. So do that if you're having trouble.
It has to do with the login. So the problem I had was when I went to go log in, it gave me like 2 or 3 different accounts. One was Outlook, one is Live, although the same account. But then there was a third one that was, I think, already associated with our old team experiment that we used.
Yeah.
And so when I would try, that's the first one I tried, and it just wouldn't go through. Mm-hmm. So when I tried the other one, and it had like a slightly different symbol, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, I think the work one has it's like an ID badge. And then the second one is just like a standard silhouette person. That's the personal one. So yeah, that's a good tip, by the way. Yeah, so when you go into that login page, if you do see 2 accounts, make sure you click the one that's more of a silhouette rather than an ID badge, because the silhouette is personal, and the ID badge is for work.
Got it. Cool stuff finally happened. Will be interesting to see how this progresses.
This is Microsoft's iMessage killer, I'm telling you.
Yeah, I'm still not into iMessage at all, but I sympathize with people who have friends who either use iMessage or they themselves use it and have friends that use Android, because that sounds terrible.
Yeah. Also, before we move on, we should actually quickly go back to the Duo. It's going to be $200 off starting next week for Black Friday. Yes. So if you missed out on that last $200 discounts and you were going to grab it, but you couldn't this coming week, or I guess if you're listening to this pre-recorded, it's $200 off. So check out the Microsoft Store. You can get $200 off. Excellent. And I think it's actually worth it for $1,200.
You can still do a trade-in on top of that.
Yeah.
So you could technically, in theory, get $900 off.
And then it's well worth it at that point.
Yeah. Although, if you're getting $700 back, you're probably trading in like a Note 20 or.
Yes, true. Yeah.
So it's like a really good phone. So make sure you.
Make sure you don't take photos.
Yeah. Right. So commit to that. Let's talk about Intel. So they're apparently quote unquote launching a laptop to compete with the likes of the XPS 13 and HP Spectre X360. Although, which is weird. I don't get how it competes with the XPS 13. We have a weird headline there. There you go. Because it's a 15-inch laptop. Why is it competing with the XP? Don't know.
So my question is, why would Intel want to make a laptop of their own?
Here's why. So when people go on about how awesome AMD is and why don't more laptop makers use those amazing chips? Because clearly they're faster. And we'll tie this into the M1 discussion later, which is performance isn't everything, folks. That's not the only deciding factor for OEMs making a laptop. And frankly, it's not the only deciding factor for people buying laptops. Keep in mind, this is super important. The top selling laptops that sell in the most volume are between $500 and $800. Yeah. So although even sites like us, and specifically me, focus on the high end, the premium stuff, the ones that set the bar, those don't sell the most. Anything over $1,000 gets into the premium range, and those are cool. They're fun to cover, but a lot of people are buying the $500, $600, $700 PCs, which is why PCs are so prevalent. It's one area where Apple still has problems competing in. So this I'll talk about the M1 and how this plays into that later on. But so one of the reasons Intel is so still kind of popular, first of all, and we'll talk about this with the XPS 13 review with the 11th gen chip soon, they're still good chips. Like, I get AMD can beat them in some uses, and that's cool, that's great. In certain use scenarios for enterprise and for gaming, that's great. In standard and ultrabooks, though, Intel is doing a lot of stuff around AI and smart computing. And I'll give a preview of that with the EliteBook 1040 G7, which is super cool. But the other thing is this. They do the R&D to make a reference design laptop for other companies. So if you're a company that makes laptops, and I say making quotes, because technically there are different ways of going about making a laptop. You could design in-house completely from scratch, Dell XPS, HP Spectre, Lenovo's ThinkPads. But they also do work with Intel on components within those laptops. The other way, of course, is you take a reference design. So what Intel is doing here is basically creating the ideal optimized 15-inch laptop that features all their best technologies tweaked to perfection. And then you can basically, as an OEM, take that, customize it, put on a different shell, different paint scheme, add in some other features and all that. Because Intel, their technology is getting so minute and discrete in terms of features that there's just ways of optimizing for battery and performance. And this is what, of course, the EVO certification is all about. EVO certification isn't just meeting certain standards, Wi-Fi 6, Thunderbolt 4, XE graphics, like you have to have those. But it's also about hitting certain benchmarks and performance things. It needs to recharge like by 50% within a certain amount of time. You need to have at least, I believe, 8 hours of battery life, real world usage, not video playback. So they've set this and this laptop basically encompasses that. And so that's the reason. And this is the reason why companies go with Intel, because if you're a company who does, why do all the R&D to design a laptop when Intel is basically, listen, this is as good as it's going to get right now. We figured it all out. This is going to have awesome battery life, awesome performance, and all our latest stuff in it, including like Alexa, far-field microphones. Like if you're a company, you're going to go for that because it's going to save you a ton of money. It's also going to save you time, not only just in execution of the device, but support, right? Because Intel helps a lot there with support of these chips. AMD is starting to get into this, but I say starting, and they have a hill to climb. It takes a while to do it. But AMD doesn't quite have reference design laptops yet. What's been happening often, HP just did this with one of its 800 series for the EliteBooks. They have like an 840, and then they have like the 845. And the 5s are AMD variants. And they're basically the same laptop, swapped out the motherboard. That's fine. AMD's like, cool, use our chip. And truth be told, they're faster than the Intel ones. Sometimes they even edge them out on battery life. But AMD would argue, just like Intel is, if you want the best out of our chips, you got to custom design the system to fully leverage it, build around the thermals, do that to make, and some companies are starting to do that. So that's what's going on here. But this is why Intel is going to be tough to, it's not, you can't just go, our chips are faster. Our chips get slightly better battery life. End of story. That's not how this business works. Mind you, you're the customer, but everything the OEMs do isn't for your benefit, right? We talked about this last week with ARM chips being more expensive than they should be. But that's because OEMs are there to make a profit. They're trying to get as much money as they can from the product they sold. They're not there to give you the best deal in the world. They only do that due to market pressure. And this is why Intel does these things. So I think it's a great idea. This is going to, Intel has taken a very active role in trying to, back in the day, you would just basically design a laptop, slap a chip in, and that was kind of it. They're taking a much more active role, and they work with Microsoft closely too to optimize everything.
Yeah.
And they're really trying to, this is a way to compete with Apple, basically, who has that whole vertical system down.
So Intel's kind of done this before behind closed doors, right? Like Intel had reference designs for dual screen PCs a few years ago, and I'm pretty sure the Surface Neo was based on one of those, or at least was inspired by one of those. Like Intel has been doing reference designs for companies for a long time. You just don't usually see it. So
the Lenovo Yoga Book.
Yes.
That's an Intel reference design, which is why when it came out, you and I complained, like, this should be an ARM device.
Yeah.
And Lenovo's kind of like, yeah, but Intel kind of designed it.
Yeah.
And they took it and modified it. And I even believe the X1 Fold may have involved
it wouldn't
Intel
surprise
too.
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is also why the Surface Neo is an Intel device. That Surface Neo to me should be an ARM device, but it's not. It's Intel because Intel helped design it. So yeah, Intel's always doing this sort of thing. Although I wish Intel would actually just make a device with the Intel logo on it and sell it. I don't know why. I just feel like they should make their own device as well. But yeah, no, this is a reference design that Dell and HP can take and slap their own logo on it if they want. You won't see Intel actually selling it with an Intel logo, which is kind of what I thought this was going to be when we first started talking about it.
No, like I said, it's like giving someone a cheat sheet.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Copy this design.
Just change it up a bit.
This will give you the best results. This is the ideal situation.
So I'm looking at the specs of it, and I assume OEMs can change these specs if they really want to. But the one that we was previewed, it has a 15.6-inch 1080p IPS display, which instantly, disgusting. But you can get it with touch, which is nice. On the inside, 11th gen Intel Core i5 1135G7 or an i7 1165G7 paired with Intel Iris Xe integrated graphics and either 8 or 16 gigs of RAM. So I assume that low resolution is for battery life and stuff, right?
Right.
1080p at 13 inches I can accept. But 15 inches, I think that's come on, this is pushing it a bit.
Yeah, like I said, I think that's just the reference. You can go above that. Okay, they can definitely put in a 4K, but this is also to help companies. Don't forget, this isn't supposed to be a premium design.
Yeah,
this is not supposed to be the high end. This is supposed
I was going to say
be mid-range.
it's not pretty. It's not pretty laptop.
This is supposed to be. This is for that segment that's literally the most important in PCs, which is the mid-range.
Yeah.
Or at least going into premium at least. And the way you do that is full HD, and we'll talk about that with the XPS 13 too.
Interestingly, this reference design has an LED light bar along the front that works with Alexa for Windows. So when you shout for Alexa, the LED light will glow blue. That's really cool. I actually like that. That would have been great if Cortana had taken off.
So, and let's talk about this for a sec too. One of the other cool technologies Intel's doing, and I have it in this EliteBook 1040 G7. It's also in the Dell Latitude 9700, I want to say, 9740 maybe, whatever their latest one is. It's their premium business laptop. What they're doing now, and you won't find this on AMD's, and again, this is where this stuff matters. And basically, laptops are getting smart. And this is really cool. They're putting a time of flight sensor now into the top bezel near the camera. What this does, it's presence detection. Whenever you see this now starting to be used with laptops, presence detection, it's a time of flight sensor. You've seen this on iPhones that use it, Samsung devices use it too. It helps detect both presence and depth or objects. What it doesn't do, it's not a camera. It's like a sonar almost. So there's no privacy risk there. It can see that an object is there. It just doesn't know what that object is, though you can tune it for rough shapes of people or something like that. So how they're using this feature is genius. So an EliteBook 1040 is a business enterprise device where security is the paramount feature. This is, again, why Apple is never going to be an EliteBook. They're never going to compete at this level. The EliteBook has smart card support if you want it. Has you can get that's right. It does have LTE support. It's one reason I'm excited about this laptop. It does have LTE on there, so you have always connected, VPN support, remote device management, all the HP's security features, which are pretty heavy duty for encryption and logging in and management. But what it does is, because security is so important, this laptop is on. Say it's on your desk. It's opened. If you walk away from the laptop, within about 5 seconds, the screen dims. And then in 5 more seconds, it automatically locks. The lock screen comes on, and then it automatically turns off the lock screen. It doesn't leave the lock screen on for like 30 seconds which is usually like if you just hit Win L on your keyboard right now, lock the screen, it'll stay on until it goes to sleep mode. This automatically turns off the display. And that's if you walked away. Anyone who comes up to that computer, though, as soon as you just walk up to it, it automatically knows a person's there. Windows Hello comes on, and the display turns back on. Now, obviously, if it doesn't recognize you, it doesn't log in. And if it does recognize you, it logs you in automatically. This is completely hands-free. You don't do anything. And it works. It's brilliant. And they've tuned it. So, like, I've heard on the Dell version, if, like, you lean back in your chair, like, it may trick it and, like, kick on.
Yeah.
But theirs is on the HP, it's very widespread. So it detects this. But it works. So it's like magic, though, because you just walk in front of it, like it looks like your laptop's off, pops back on, logs you in.
This is the exact same tech that the Pixel 4 had, right? They had the time of flight sensor, or they had it was
That's
Google's
a combo. This Soli you're talking
Soli
about
stuff. Yeah,
I feel like that might have had part of that sensor. Yeah,
well,
was like a lot going on.
It delivered the same sort of result, whereas it could detect like a hand coming towards it, and before you've touched it, it would wake up the Face ID and log you in and stuff.
So what's cool about this tech was we've kind of had stuff like this before, but it relied on the camera.
Yes.
So the camera would have to be on all the time, which drains battery. Also, kind of a privacy concern. On the EliteBook, there's a button on the keyboard. You can hit it, and it actually physically covers the camera. A little white film goes across it, and it's like it's a physical occlusion, but it's behind the glass.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool.
Whereas, Lenovo had a solution where you would like slide it, right? It would be a physical thing.
Manual.
HP used to have the feature where it was a switch that would kill the BIOS feature for it and would kill the power, but that you could still see the lens. This, you hit a button and it just completely occludes the camera. But if you did that, this feature still works. Now, when it goes to log you in, it's not that Windows Hello can't work, but they have a fingerprint sensor on this. So you just come up and you would just use your fingerprint sensor.
That's cool.
So, again, it's protecting your privacy, right? So this is the stuff I'm talking about. Also, this laptop does things like it can detect when it's in your lap versus on your desk. And the reason it does that is because when it's on the desk, it goes, you're on the desk, you don't probably care if I'm going to get a little hot in the bottom, and I'm going to run at a higher performance. When it's in your lap, you're not going to want it to get really hot. So it's going to tune the performance down a little bit so it keeps the laptop cooler. And it's actually being able to start to detect the app you're running. So if you're running Photoshop versus like GroupMe, you're not going to necessarily need all the cores and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, then you get to the far field microphone stuff. And what they're doing is they're offsetting a lot of this stuff from the main processor. This is where Intel's becoming like, they're doing stuff that AMD isn't there yet. So this stuff is very low power. Like this laptop gets really good battery life.
Yeah. Despite
having these new features, because they're putting it off, and you're seeing this in phones. They're doing this too.
It is funny, right? When you think of the enterprise market and PCs, like what chip would an enterprise want? It's an Intel chip. You're not going to find many enterprises going, oh yeah, we need the AMD stuff. Not because AMD is worse, because as we all know now, they're kind of not. They're kind of getting there. They're doing really well. I think the next gen AMD chips are supposed to be amazing, even outperforming the Apple M1s and whatnot. But it's you choose Intel if you're an enterprise because they have the security features, they have the AI stuff, and AMD, just as Dan said, doesn't have that yet. They have the raw performance, but it's not always about performance. Sometimes it's about feature set and compatibility and whatnot.
And you mentioned AI, so another use there Intel's doing, companies can jump in on, and HP does it too, although they're doing a little bit of their own, is exactly what I'm using right now, which is RTX voice. This is NVIDIA RTX voice that running my PC. It's using my GPU to actively filter out. So my cat before was meowing her head off, and you probably didn't hear it because of AI detecting that, keeping my voice going, but filtering out the background noise. Well, Intel's doing that too on laptops, and this laptop does it too. Now, it's not as impressive as RTX is, because RTX, like I said, uses a full GPU to make that happen, which doesn't make it. You want to do that on a laptop because it's the processing power. But they're they're putting again this off onto one of their chips, the side chips, instead of the main processor, and it does dramatically filter out background noise. And then we're in a world of COVID, and people work from home. Like, this is an increasingly important feature. And when I was on an HP briefing, this was for, like I said, the EliteBook 1040 G7. So that's the 1000 series is their premium business laptops. They have the 800 series for the plebs.
Wow.
Now, basically, if you get an 800 series, you're more like a regular worker, right? This is more executive level.
Yeah.
And that one, they had the 845 with the AMD chip in there. And they showed it outperforms Intel, and it gets slightly better battery life, which is awesome, which is why they're making it. But it doesn't have any of these features I just mentioned. None of them. Because they're just, AMD doesn't do that. So with AMD, you're getting raw performance, but you're not getting these smart features. And that's where Intel is putting a lot of its money in. And like I said, AI is not a buzzword anymore. It really is turning into smart computing. And that's the future of laptops. This is why the M1, like, I know it's a fast chip, and for some people, if you're rendering 4K video, it's awesome, right? I don't care, right? Everything the MacBook does with the M1 doesn't matter to me, because I use the Surface Pro X, right? So I need 4G LTE, I need pen support, I want a touchscreen, I want a tablet convertible 2-in-1. That's what I want, and that device doesn't do it. But what's really going to be, processors are getting to a point for a certain segment of PC users, not everyone. They're getting to the point where they're kind of good enough. We're also getting to the point where we're starting to get into cloud computing. And cloud computing is going to dramatically reduce the need for localized heavy-duty processing. Yeah. You're not going to run a cloud OS in the future with a 45 or 35-watt processor and an NVIDIA GTX GPU on there with a 97-watt-hour battery and a 4-pound laptop, right? You're going to run it on an ARM processor. Right. It's going to be done in the cloud with 5G. And so this race for performance for a certain segment of the market is always going to be important.
Yeah.
Video creators, editors, those kind of people.
And servers.
And servers, yeah.
Yeah.
But for another segment, it's going to become irrelevant. And I think it's already become irrelevant. Again, so the question, look at the XPS 13. The version I recommended this spring, the 9300, and now we'll kind of go into this review. I gave it basically a perfect rating. There was no point I was using that laptop thinking this thing is slow and sluggish if only it had a better processor in it. It was, for what it's supposed to do as a laptop, was fine. Like, the new version with the 11th gen is like 31% faster. The GPU, the Intel Xe graphics, is 6% faster than NVIDIA's MX330. And it did all that, getting this much better performance while also gaining hours of battery life. I was getting now up to 14 hours and averaging around 10 hours with a Core i7. At no point did I use this and thought, damn, this thing, if it was only faster, would be better. Now, if I get it, if I was to process a 4K video, but I don't do that for my job. Again, it's completely irrelevant. Getting to the Macs, let's be honest, Apple laptops have always been highly regarded, highly reviewed. No one really complained they were slow. Yeah, the battery life wasn't fantastic, but people clearly lived with it, and a lot of people are okay with it. Again, no one's going to say no to more power or more battery. But that wasn't, go back and read the reviews of MacBooks. It wasn't like people are like, it's slow and sluggish and terrible to use. So this idea of like the M1 is going to completely change laptops. I think it allows us to think beyond where we are right now and push boundaries, which is a good thing. I don't think the weak spot for Apple laptops was performance or battery life, is my point here. It never was. The reason you bought Apple was because for your job, it was your first laptop, you're a video or a creator and you want to do like video editing and you need Final Cut Pro and there are certain apps. You have an iPhone and an iPad already. You want that ecosystem. And someone brought up there like, oh no, it's more about than raw performance. It's battery life. And he gave me this example of this lawyer who upgraded his MacBook Pro to the new MacBook Pro with the M1, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's so much better. I can go all day." And I'm like, "But you proved my point. He was already a Mac user who upgraded to a new Mac."
Yeah.
That's the majority of Apple. Like, they only do 7% of all laptop sales.
Yeah.
And it's been steady like that for years. And it hasn't been because Apple laptops were poorly reviewed. They've always gotten like 8s and 9s and 10s from like people. So I don't think this is, and if you're a PC user, can you give up Windows to switch to Mac?
Right.
For some people, yes. In which case, go for it. I say go buy a Mac. For a lot of people though, you use Windows because you like Windows. You use Windows because you need Windows. You like Windows because you can get a 2-in-1 form factor with inking support and 4G LTE or 5G or a tablet or a convertible 15-inch or an NVIDIA GPU to game on. Like, that's the diversity you get with Windows. That an M1 chip doesn't by itself solve anything.
I agree with you 100%. Like the whole Mac being 7% of the market is so true, because Apple does price themselves out of most people's price bracket. They are premium laptops, and even with the M1 chips, they didn't drop the prices. Apple could very easily make those laptops and sell them for less because they make their own chips now. They're not at the mercy of Intel or other people.
That's true. Yeah.
But they decided to keep them premium, and that's Apple for you. So that already knocks out a huge part of the market who just cannot afford to spend £1,000 or $1,000 on a laptop. But then you have the other people who just don't like macOS. I'm one of them. I've tried macOS again and again, and I just cannot get used to it. I don't like it. I don't like how it looks. Well, actually, I don't mind how it looks, but I don't like how it behaves. I don't like the UX. I don't like how when you press the full screen button in an app, it actually just makes everything go away, and now the app's like full screen. It's like, no, I don't want that. I want to see the time and stuff still under my dock, but Apple decides, no, you can't do that. And it is ridiculous. 7% of the Mac, and I think that's got to remain like that forever, more or less. But the other point Dan mentioned there about offloading, intensive tasks to the cloud, that's where the future is. Like, this Surface Pro X exists with ARM, but in the future, I will be able to do everything I do on my desktop with an x86 processor on this, thanks to the cloud. And that's why because I've seen a lot of people saying, oh yeah, the M1, the Apple's chips kill Windows and ARM because, Windows can't take advantage of it. There's no point even trying anymore. We might as well stick with x86. But that's not right, because if you look at the Surface Pro X, you will not find an x86 PC this thin. You just won't find it. And with the power of the cloud, what it can't do locally will no longer matter, because the cloud can step in and help you out in those times as well. So yeah, I think the PC industry is going to change a lot in the next 10 years. Because this last 10 years has very much been the realization that the future is mobile. And I feel like we haven't really started seeing that really take effect on the PC industry until like the last 5-6 years. And it's really picking up steam now with ARM coming to PCs as well as the Mac and, whatever. And also leveraging the cloud. xCloud launched this year. xCloud has just started this year, as is Stadia, and Amazon's getting involved as well. Using the cloud for stuff is about to take another leap forward, because we've already been using it for files and storing documents and stuff and photos, easy peasy. Now we're using it to stream video games, which is, low latency. We need to make sure that the video stream is perfect and input isn't laggy. If we can get video games done, we can do video editing and 3D rendering and whatever else you need to do, word processing, whatever. Way easier than game streaming, but we're already there with game streaming, right? So,
and we already kind of got that, right, with saving to the cloud with Word, right?
They've exactly,
been building towards this for years.
Exactly,
it's one reason laptop reviews are kind of easy for me, because so much of my stuff is already in the cloud. It takes me a couple minutes to basically get my laptop up to where my main one is.
And this is why Windows 10X exists. It may be difficult to see right now, but Windows 10X exists because Microsoft knows that there's a future where the platform is almost irrelevant, and all Windows needs to be is a lightweight ground for everything else you do in the browser or through streaming on a legacy version of Windows that's in the cloud. That doesn't affect your battery life or system performance, because once you close that window, all of that legacy stuff is off your PC somewhere else, somewhere, in another country or whatever. And your device remains nice and lightweight because it hasn't got any of that legacy stuff in it, and it's not, crunching all that data, because all of that data was being crunched on a server somewhere, which is super cool.
Two things, of course, someone's bringing up about cloud latency is terrible.
I know. Yeah. This isn't going to be. This isn't a solution for everybody, and it's not going to be happening tomorrow. That's the thing we always have to say, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like latency is a solvable problem. It's not like some barrier in a wall that, technologically that's impossible to overcome. We've seen latency and performance improve. 5G is actually one of the steps in that direction, and 5G, when done right in certain areas, actually is good, right? It's just going to take a long time to kind of roll out, but that's one of the promises of 5G is the reduced latency. So again, these are solvable problems, and we had a whole discussion about this a couple of weeks ago in the podcast. But there is no world where you can convince me that my internet experience today in 2020 is worse than what it was in 2010. You can't make that argument. It is better. It is way better.
Yeah.
Wi-Fi is in more places. It's more reliable. LTE exists. I don't think LTE existed in 2010, or maybe it was just
coming around. Yeah.
Yeah. It's in way more coverage now. Not enough. Still can be improved, especially in the US, but it's way better. I mentioned how I'm going to plug Mint Mobile again, because I ordered a second Mint Mobile line now.
Wow.
I switched. Dude, I was paying like $80 on AT&T every month.
That's a lot of money.
For like service, which is stupid. I'm now paying $15 with Mint. And the reason I was able to switch, because Mint rides on T-Mobile, and T-Mobile was garbage where I was at my best friend's house. My best friend's house literally had 0 bars. I would lose reception. So there was no way I was going to switch to T-Mobile or Mint, right? All of a sudden, Mint now not only do I get like 5 bars in my area, I get 5G in a lot of my areas that I go to, which I was kind of dismissing 5G. And this isn't ultra wideband. This isn't the super fast stuff. This is 20% faster than LTE.
Yeah.
But I'm still surprised to see it, right? So but again, that just happened in about 3 to 4 years, that time span of where T-Mobile went from something I couldn't use to here I am switching all my lines over to them. So latency, performance, all that is, think 10 years out, we're not going to be like still on 4G LTE, right? We're going to be on a much better things. Yeah. Wi-Fi 6, of course, then it'll probably be Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth, all these technologies are evolving. And so it's also,
you might also in the future see hybrid applications that are sort of part cloud, part localized, where you have the UI that's local, so that's all happening on device, so it feels native when you're using it and stuff, but then the actual data you pull in is from the cloud, say a 3D render or something, or the video you're editing, the actual rendering is happening off your PC, but the actual editing process is happening locally on your device because you're using the UI is locally there, but any edits and stuff you make to the clips and stuff, and when you play that video back, that actually happens off your PC. I'm sure we're going to see stuff like that in the future. I don't know if it's possible yet. I mean, I'm not a developer, so how would I know? But I don't see how it wouldn't be possible to do stuff like that in the future. And that, I think, would be a happy medium ground for a lot of people as well. Because I think a lot of people are worried that, I don't like the idea of not having an internet connection and clicking on an application and then that application being a blank thing because there's no internet now. These hybrid apps could do a sort of basic offline stuff when you have no internet. But then when you do have internet, you get that added rendering power and horsepower essentially in the back end that gives you the extra oomph you need to play a game or render a video or crunch some data, which I think is super cool as well.
Yep, and this, turning back to the M1, listen, again, I'm not dismissing how good that is of a chip, how impressive it is, how I give Apple full credit that it's going to even get better. We're going to see in there that it's good, and it's good for the industry. It's good that Intel is probably going to have to work harder now. Same with Qualcomm. We're all going to benefit in terms of competition. I think it's great. I also want to point out that the race for raw performance and discrete localized processing is a battle that's going to really wind down in the next couple of years as we switch over to cloud computing. It's going to become less relevant.
It will be less relevant to us, but it will still be a battle that happens at a very high level for these server farms and stuff that will be powering the cloud stuff. But it won't be something we really hear about. You might hear about it every now and then, like there's a huge leap in performance and stuff, and it will benefit subscribers of Microsoft 365 or iCloud or Google whatever you call it, Google these days, or Amazon's version of servers. Like you'll hear that sort of stuff. But there will be a battle for that, but at the very top. For us lot who actually use these sort of the client, the PCs, the thin clients, the stuff that we buy in the store and work from home, it's not really going to matter much, I don't think.
And to credit Apple here, their core audience is kind of the ones that need a lot of times discrete localized processing.
True.
Not all of them,
yes,
but a lot of them do. Like they're I keep bringing up the video because that's all I see is people like, I crunch video for YouTube, and I get it. Like people do that now,
and there will always be people who need that, and this it's never going to go away. We're not saying that one day all these companies are going to just cut off all of their high super powerful laptops and only limit them to the cloud. That's never going to happen. But I'm saying for most normal people should be able to work from a Surface Pro X just fine, and even get done some of that gaming or that video editing they need to do. If I could do everything from this, I would choose to do that if the cloud was ready for me to do that. But obviously Microsoft's cloud PC isn't ready yet. But when that's ready and I can do that, I'm going to absolutely be doing that because I love this thing. I love the idea of just having one thin PC to do everything I need to do. But we're not there yet, unfortunately.
My prediction, and you can, if anyone's listening to this and wants to throw it back in my face in 2 to 3 years, because maybe I'm wrong. Let's see what Apple's chips do for their overall sales. Like I said, I believe the latest figures from Statista was that like around 7% of all PC, either PC or PC laptop sales is Apple. The rest is going to be Windows and Ubuntu. But and that's a huge uphill, and that number has been very consistent over years. Like it hasn't shifted. And that's not to say Apple hasn't seen, like their last quarter, they actually did see an uptick in sales for their Mac. So it's not like they're declining, but overall they kind of have been getting cannibalized by their iPads, right? Yeah. That has been a thing. My prediction, you're not going to see that number significantly change.
Yeah.
Maybe, listen, if they can get 2 or 3 points and hit 10% or 11% of all PC sales from this chip, that's impressive. It's still not huge. Like, you still got a long hill. It's the same thing we see with iOS and Android, right?
Yeah.
Especially in the US. It's a lot of people use iOS. Fewer use Android, go to the rest of the world. But those battles don't really change, right? I know so many Samsung users who are Samsung users.
Yeah.
They're not switching to the iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. And iPhone users sure as hell aren't switching to Android.
I'm the same. Every year Apple comes out with a new chip in the iPhone. It's the most powerful chip in a mobile phone and stuff. Right. It's like, it's amazing. It can do all this rendering stuff. I couldn't care less. I will continue to use an Android device, whether that be a Surface Duo or another Android device in the future, because I prefer that platform over iOS. It's the exact same thing on the PC side. I prefer Windows over macOS, and unless the Apple M1s are coming to PC, I'm not going to be using an M1 chip anytime soon, and I don't care. It's not a problem for me.
And don't forget, you can no longer run Windows in Boot Camp on an M1 chip,
which is ridiculous. But also,
maybe they'll solve that later. Again, technically, this is a solvable problem. So I always like to lump things into. That's a solvable issue. Like the thing I was pointing about, like Macs aren't 2-in-1 devices. That's technically a solvable problem. They could do that.
They could make them,
and maybe they will. But as of right now,
they're not.
If you want, like I said, a device that's like Surface Pro X, you're kind of screwed on that side. You can't do it all. I was going to say something else, but now I kind of forgot.
Nice.
But
we've been on a long rant about this, but I think it's really interesting because this. Because don't get me wrong, the M1s are amazing, and they are pushing the boundaries for laptops in certain ways, and it is great. And I do wish that on the Windows side, Qualcomm were up there and able to sort of compete at that level. They aren't, and hopefully they will be in a couple of years, or maybe they'll always lag behind. I don't know, but it's not going to change that. It's not going to make me want to use Mac OS anymore. And also. And also that Apple's in a weird position right now, because I think I mentioned this last week as well. Although they've just put these M1 chips in the Mac and they're like, oh yeah, the Mac is great, blah, blah, blah. the Mac is not their focus, and it hasn't been for years. It's iOS and iPadOS. That's where their users are. That's where the majority of their moneymaker is. And they would prefer
an average users.
Yeah. They would prefer making iOS and iPadOS the default operating system for their platform, which I mean it kind of is already. And I think what we're going to see in the future is these M1 chips or these laptop class chips come to the iPad.
Sure.
And what I think will happen is the iPad Pro will will replace the MacBook Air, maybe even the MacBook Pro at some point as well. Because if you look at the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro now, they're the same device. One's with a fan, one's without a fan. There's very little different between them at this point. It's like it is weird. It's weird, right? And it's like
it's very arbitrary.
I think those two are going to go away, and what we'll see is the iPad Pro become the new laptop, the new Apple laptop. And then we'll see the Mac Pro be the Mac desktop for legacy stuff for those people who do need like an actual legacy version of Apple's operating system.
And just this idea of like switching OSs, especially for laptops and desktop, is not trivial. It's no different than I think like we brought up the phones. You already have a lot of. If you're an iPhone user, you're probably not switching to Android. Yeah. There's some bleed over that go back and forth every year, obviously. There have been iPhone users who bought a Surface Duo, for instance. But even Microsoft told us, we don't expect iPhone users to buy this device. Yeah. We're less concerned. This is more for people who are familiar with Android and want an Android device.
Yeah.
Which is being very reasonable.
That's the Apple lock-in, right? That's the ecosystem that Apple has created, where it doesn't really matter what other companies do. Samsung can come up with the most amazing phone ever. The Fold, the Galaxy Fold. Imagine a Galaxy Fold that's waterproof, has no durability issues, and it costs $500. Amazing. An iPhone user is not going to switch to it because it doesn't have iMessage, or it doesn't have all of their app purchases or their iTunes library or their Apple TV, things that Apple users subscribe to and buy into. That Samsung device, that's amazing, doesn't have it. And that nothing's ever going to change that. And Apple has their iPhone users by the neck because it's like leaving the ecosystem is hard at this point because it's how long has the ecosystem been around for Apple? Since the iPhone 7, since the first iPhone in 2007. That's a long time. That's a big library people have collected. Even longer if you've been using an iPod, right? The iTunes library started in 2001. So for those who had an iPod from the beginning, your Apple ecosystem has been around for almost 20 years at this point. Just dropping all of that is no small task, and and no amount of amazing processing chips or hardware designs ever going to change that for an iPhone user. It's the exact same thing for Windows PCs and the Mac right now with the M1 chip, in my opinion.
Someone also brought up quickly about iOS apps on the M1. As far as I saw from the reviews, everybody was like, it's there. It's kind of neat. It's not some apps don't run. Some apps don't make sense. And a lot of the apps are touch-based, and the solution and using a mouse
is ridiculous.
Replacement is very clunky and impossible to remember. I feel like this is it doesn't hurt to have. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like this is the future though for this. It's the same experience.
You won't be using an iPhone app, a productivity iPhone app on your Mac. What this is there for is for games and streaming services, I think. I think that's where it really makes the most sense.
Even there, they need optimization, right? Some of the apps now don't do even full screen.
Sure.
And as I said, it makes less sense. iPhone apps are built around the premise you're always connected to the internet.
Yeah.
You
have a finger.
And you have a finger, right? You just took both of those things away when you're running on a Mac because there's no touchscreen and there's no LTE. Again, technically a solvable problem. So they may solve this, but as of right now, I think it's much ado about nothing.
I cannot wait for Apple to make a touchscreen Mac just so everyone on the Windows side can go, I told you so. Because I'm waiting for that day. I'm going to have the memes. It's going to be great.
Yeah, so, we may have some, Microsoft may have an answer to this too, by the way, but I'm just going to tease that's a Zach story coming up. Shh. Let's move on though, finally to, XPS 13, real quickly. Review is up, the 9310. I don't want to spend too much time on it. Intel's 11th gen processor, already talked a little bit. The performance increase is significant. This is one of the first laptops where gen over gen, and the last version it had was the exact same config, so it was literally apples to apples on this one as far as the comparison. First time I can actually say it seems faster. Like I literally felt just doing on Edge, running productivity tasks, This thing was buttery smooth, instant on, all this kind of stuff. Really cool. And you're getting more battery life, like way more battery life, which we're talking hours of improvements. It runs cool. I just love this laptop. I still think it's putting money aside, it's the perfect 13-inch Windows Ultrabook. It's the only thing that's bad is the web camera. The 720p micro cam. Back when I reviewed this early this year, not as big of a deal because it was pre-pandemic. Now it's kind of a big deal since we rely on webcams. But to defend Dell a little bit, literally everyone has terrible webcams, including those new Macs have awful webcams. The only company that's consistently made the best webcams has been Microsoft on Surface devices, and Zach has in front of him the best webcam on any mobile device, period, which is the Surface Pro X, which its webcam is incredible in terms of resolution, quality, and just overall usefulness. So that's his only weak spot. And I guess I could say it doesn't have 4G LTE. I personally would love to see that. I also acknowledge I'm in a niche market there, and that's not a make or break for a lot of people. But and I said it's not a cheap laptop. It starts at $1,000. That's the Core i3, full HD, non-touch. And you go up to the version I reviewed was 1700 or 1650, depending if you get white or silver. But the one I reviewed was a Core i7, 16 gig, 512 storage, right? That's the one I think a lot of people hear. That's the sweet spot. So 1650 for that. It's an incredible device. Like, the keyboard is great. The trackpad is good. It looks awesome. Get it in the Arctic white, though. Again, don't use the black and silver unless you really need that. The Arctic white is just so cool. But just a real bang up job. So basically a perfect laptop, just got way better because of Intel 11th gen. And I'm glad they didn't use AMD. There, I said it. I will also early next week have a similar update review for the XPS 13 2-in-1, which is same deal. They kept everything basically the same. It just gets a new 11th gen. Spoiler alert, you're getting all the same benefits. Actually, the 2-in-1 runs slightly better performance than the XPS 13. And I like the 2-in-1 better because the 2-in-1 has a wider deck on the keyboard because of the way the display hinge works. So you have more room to rest your palms on. So I find it more comfortable. It also has the maglev keyboard, which I love. And it's a 2-in-1 with pen support, optional pen support, I should say. You don't get the pen in the box. But yeah, it folds back on itself. Awesome audio, slightly better performance on it. In fact, I already kind of put some of the benchmarks into the XPS 13 review if you want to go check them out. But yeah, spoiler, if you need a 2-in-1 and don't mind paying a little bit more premium, they do, they compete with Apple a little bit, except you're getting a touchscreen with their devices. But again, that awesome Sharp IGZO, which has the anti-reflective layer on it, which I love. Very color accurate, at least for this price range. Really nice stuff. Yeah, I shared with Zach. I really took someone out in comments yesterday because they're like, they're talking about how 79% DCI-P3. If you don't know, that's a color gamut rating. I measure all the displays. They're like, that doesn't seem very impressive for 2020. I'm like, I understood what he was saying because there are displays that hit 97% DCI-P3. DCI-P3 is sort of it's the widest color gamut. It's the most professional. It's the hardest one to achieve. sRGB is pretty easy these days. A lot of companies are hitting 100% on that. When it comes to 13-inch laptops, no one is doing 97%, as far as I know, DCI-P3. I'm not even sure the Macs do it. They definitely don't do it on Adobe RGB. But relatively speaking, the XPS 13s do have the most color accurate displays of all the 13-inch Windows laptops. If you really, 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 really want color accuracy, you got to head into the 15 and 17-inch ranges, though. So the Dell XPS 15 has a really color accurate display, and the 17 is even more color accurate. So that's just the way it works, which makes sense. If you really, really need color accuracy, like you care about having 97% DCI-P3, you're probably buying a 15 or a 17-inch laptop because you need that screen real estate. You're probably not doing that kind of advanced professional photography work on a 13-inch, just saying. But yeah, these are great laptops. Now, I say the pricing, they are, like I said, higher. HP, in my opinion, their Spectres are priced way cheaper. You're talking about $300 savings. And you can get a 2-in-1. They throw a pen in the box. You do got to get that 16:9 display, which stinks. They do have the Spectre X360 14 out now, which we haven't reviewed yet. Hopefully we'll get it soon. That does have a 3x2 display and a 2-in-1. It's like a Surface laptop come to life with a 2-in-1 feature. So a lot of promise there. I still overall prefer the XPS design and the way it feels, but HP can't be dismissed here either. So ton of reviews coming up on Windows Central. I'm up to my neck in laptops again, so look forward to those coming up soon. All right, what else do we have to talk about here? This is a very ranty podcast.
xCloud.
xCloud.
Yay!
Yes. Take this story.
So yeah, me, Dan, and Jez have access to the xCloud sort of program or app rather for Windows 10. We've been sort of trying it out this week. It's not out publicly yet, so we don't know when it's coming publicly. But there is an app; it does exist, and I feel like when it's actually ready, it will actually be part of the actual Xbox app. I don't think it'll be a standalone app. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. But yeah, we have the sort of game streaming app here, and it works with xCloud. And I need to sneeze. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Here it is. If you're watching the video, you can take a quick look here. This is what it looks like. If you tap on a game, let's say Halo 5, it will just jump straight in and you will be able to stream that game from an Xbox that's stored in one of Microsoft's servers. And it works just like the Android version. Some games even have on-screen buttons and stuff, so if you are using it as a tablet, like I am here on the Pro X, some games will have a dedicated sort of touchscreen interface that you can use to interact with, so you don't have to use a controller. Interestingly, on this build of the app we've got here, you can actually enable a universal controller that works in any game, but it's not very good, which is why Microsoft sort of prefers it if developers customize their own on-screen keys for their specific game. But yeah, it also works with, obviously, if you plug in or connect a Bluetooth Xbox controller, you can play just like that as well. And I've been trying it out, and latency is fine. Like I'm not, it's not. You do feel it, but it's not terrible. I'm able to play Halo campaign and stuff just fine with it. I also played Forza Horizon 4, and for a racing game, I feel like a racing game you can get away with it because turning in a racing game is so sort of laggy, or not laggy, but like delayed anyway. So yeah, it's really great. It's very simple. I mean, it's just like the Android app. It has all of your games. You can search for games. You click on it, you play, and it loads you into it. And it takes about a minute to get into the game because it has to connect to the server and stuff. But then you're in and you're good to go. And it's really cool to see. It's native on the Surface Pro X, so it's ARM compatible. It works obviously on normal PCs as well. And yeah, hopefully it gets launched soon. I don't know what they're waiting for.
It looks really nice. Like the layout, they did a really good job with it. Like it's really fancy looking.
I've got Halo 5 running here, and we can do like the usual. There's the guide and whatnot. It's really cool.
Yeah, I was going to. I played Doom on it the other day, Doom Eternal, which was pretty wild on a Pro X, which is insane.
Yeah.
Now it was 720p resolution, but it's high quality. It's so the graphics are tuned up, but there's a difference, right? You can have like all the fancy stuff on, but still streaming at 720p. So it's not as crisp as like a 15-inch gaming laptop with a 4K or something like that. But the fact I could do it on the Pro X was all I kind of wanted, because the Pro X has just become this. It was funny because I was looking at the Pro X and going through the Microsoft store for games, which is terrible for the Pro X. You can do a lot of stuff on Steam on the Pro X, which is what I do.
Yeah.
But then it was just like I launched this app, and it was just like, here's Destiny 2, here's Doom, and it was, of course, because it's Game Pass. There are a bunch of games I've never played before that all of a sudden I have now at my fingertips access to all these AAA titles on a device that's like as thin as an iPad and as light as an iPad, which has awesome audio, and you connect up an Xbox controller. Like, this is kind of all I want. Like, why, when I travel, would I bring a 15-inch gaming laptop with me just to game, right? And you can argue, well, you need internet, though, for this. But I'd actually argue if I want to play Destiny 2 on a laptop right now and installed it from wherever you install Destiny 2 anymore. I forgot, it's switched stores so many times. But to play Destiny 2, you got to be online.
Yeah.
A lot of games you need to be online for these days. They need to check your account, download your save your progress, right? We've already gotten away from this idea that games are strictly all offline. Some of them can be, my Steam arcade style games are like that, and that's cool. Pinball, I don't care about if it's online. But for like a AAA title like Destiny 2 or even Doom, being online is kind of already a requirement. But the idea of like me traveling just with my Pro X and an Xbox controller, I mean, hell yeah, I'm very much excited about this. So
Yeah, me too. I'd also love to see, like, it's great to see it on the Pro X, but I'd love to see that gamepad mode on the Duo that they sort of conceptualized in the Duo's unveiling video. So with the top screens the game, the bottom screens the touch controls. That'd be so cool, but that's not there yet.
Yep. Let's see. My mouse is dying, which is pretty funny because I forgot to charge it. Let's see what other stories we got here. Okay. Microsoft Edge can now sync browsing history and open tabs across devices in theory. This apparently is in the Edge Dev, which is actually what I used. And I do have it on my Pro X as Dev and my desktop as Dev. And I use it because I also get vertical tabs, which is awesome. I'm a convert to vertical tabs. I absolutely love the vertical tab orientation. I think it looks so much better, so much more easy to manage. And I love the little options behind it. But now you can also sync your history between devices, as I said, in theory. When this all comes online, this is going to be really great, especially because I imagine it'll happen with iOS and Android. So your phones and all that will kind of sync up. And that's kind of the dream. You just have that one browser experience. But yeah, Edge is coming along quite nicely. I did start using Bing on the iPhone, actually. I am using Bing more often as an app, which is kind of, I didn't think I would. But
in things nobody has ever said today.
and I think it's because on iOS, you can't do like a search bar as a widget.
Right, yeah.
Which is like how on Android, of course, I have the Bing bar there. So I would normally launch Edge and just go to the address bar and type it in. But then I was just like, Bing kind of does it. And what's kind of neat is I'm using the Bing app to basically do what I do with Bing, which is ask questions or look up information. Or who's that actor? What movie was that? I don't necessarily want that in my Edge stuff. Edge is where I'm reading stories and doing more in-depth work and research, and I want that stuff there all the time. I don't want who was in that movie I watched 3 days ago, So, but I find with Bing, using Bing for that and Edge, keeping them separate, is actually kind of worked out. So that's been kind of a neat thing. Let's see what other stories we have to quickly cover here. Oh, Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. I was told I should talk about this. I've never played Age of Empires 1 or 2.
You don't have to talk about it, Dan. You can say no.
Well, this is by our writer Cale Hunt, who's done he was saying this has actually been quite popular. So it's an anniversary update, brings a ton of new content and balancing. So if you're into that, go check out that story. I love these games. These games are super cool. I just don't have the time or commitment. Problem. I was looking at one last night. It was a Civilizations one. What's that one called? I forgot. It's in the store too.
No. I can't remember. I know what you're talking about though. Yeah.
Let me look it up now. Now we've got to know. Well, of course, my store.
I thought it was called Civilizations, to be honest, but I don't think that's right.
Oh, here it is. Gaming. Of course, it doesn't show up. Oh, there's a battle royale mode with. Really, battle royale with. Why is the store so slow? Oh, Age of Empires 2 has a battle royale mode. Too new. Anyways, that Civilization game actually can install and run on Surface Pro X because it's a x86.
I do wonder if you can video edit on the Pro X because I can't test it because everything is 64-bit. So that's one thing I'm really interested in trying out.
It was an app someone recommended. It was an open source one for video editing. That was supposed to work pretty well, but I forgot to follow up on it. So.
Yeah. The thing is though, since for our videos on YouTube we use After Effects for the intro and stuff, which we would need to use Premiere Pro to actually make the video for Windows Central. So yeah, I'm going to be super interested to see the performance. Because that's something we should talk about. Photoshop on ARM. This
Yes.
week, Adobe finally, after a year of saying it's on its way, released the first beta build of Photoshop for Windows 10 on ARM. And it's beautiful. It is missing features, and not every feature is there, but as somebody who doesn't often use Photoshop for too much, everything that I need Photoshop to do, it can do on ARM. And it works beautifully. It loads quickly. Pen inking is
So this is
smooth.
compiled for ARM.
Yes, this is native ARM 64, and
Wow.
it is beautiful, and it gives me hope that Windows ARM is a viable thing in the future, because hopefully Adobe, because I think Adobe said they're bringing the Creative Cloud Suite to ARM.
They announced last year, I believe it was October,
Yeah,
that they were going to be bringing stuff over, and
Yeah.
we've already seen them writing new apps
that's true.
using UWP.
Yeah.
And so that does seem to be, now to Adobe's credit, we say, oh, it's been a year, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
because
Photoshop
we
is a
talked about-
very legacy application. It's been around for a very long time,
Right.
and the fact that it's running, and it's missing, I think it's like 15 features or something, but it's like it like most of it's there, and I think it's really impressive that they've done it.
there's a lot of libraries and
Yeah.
APIs. They don't just hit a button and recompile.
Yeah.
That they have to go
Which
through
is the case for
rewrite
some
the code.
applications, but
Sure.
not in the case of Adobe ones. I think Adobe's ones are very deep, and a lot of proprietary code there that they need to convert to ARM and stuff. Which is, it's funny because like this beta build showed up the exact same day the Photoshop for M1, Apple M1 showed up, and a lot of people were like, wow, look, see, Apple's finally doing it, so I guess Windows gets to reign in its success as well. It was like, no, I thought like Photoshop, they've been working on Photoshop for Windows ARM for quite a while. It just happened to be ready at around the same time as the Apple M1 Max went on sale.
I mean, there's probably overlap in the teams,
Sure.
as projects to convert this stuff.
I also have a feeling that because of I have a feeling that it's easier to convert a macOS app to ARM than it is to convert a legacy desktop Windows app to ARM.
Right.
Only because every application on macOS uses Xcode to compile, and I think you can only use Xcode. I don't know if there's other compilers you can use. I could be wrong about that. But on Windows, there's so many different compilers you can use that it would be impossible for Microsoft to be able to just make that process an easy one. I think they can do it through, the standard compiler through Visual Studio or whatever. I don't know, but it's not as straightforward as it is for macOS, and that's another advantage of having ultimate control over your market. Apple can just cut off legacy features and stuff, which they did. They dropped Win32 stuff. 32-bit applications, didn't they? Which I think might have been a really, really big step in this transition to ARM, because now there's none of that old crap, none of those old programs who never moved to 64-bit to even convert to ARM. They're all gone.
And that's an important word you use, that Apple is transitioning to ARM.
Yes.
That is not what Microsoft is doing.
Right.
Microsoft is not transitioning to ARM. Microsoft is offering ARM as yet another option for Windows manufacturers and devices, and a new category of devices.
Yeah.
And that's such an important distinction, because Apple is getting rid of Intel and x86 and moving all its stuff over to ARM. So it makes more sense for developers to jump on board and make that happen, because it's a transition. For Microsoft, it's just an option. And that,
and that does mean
has its
slower
pros and
adoption.
cons.
It just means
It means slower adoption. Yeah, and that's just the way it's going to be. If Microsoft said, we're done with Intel, we're done with AMD, we're not doing x86 anymore, just ARM, I'm sure you would also see the industry shift more dramatically. You'd also see a lot of people get very mad, right?
Oh yeah, that'd be crazy.
Which is why they don't do that. But that's a crucial difference that gets lost in all this, which is like, Apple does it so much better. It's like, yeah, well, Apple, they don't care. They're doing their own thing. They don't care about Intel and AMD and NVIDIA. They're going to just do but that's not how Microsoft works. And they're never, if anything, Microsoft has gotten, this word chip diversification. They're now really embracing AMD. They're embracing Intel. They're embracing Qualcomm. They want all of that stuff, and they're not picking favorites. They're leaving it up to the market, which is a good thing. But as Zach points out, slower adoption as a result. But yeah, it's funny with Photoshop you mentioned, because I don't use Photoshop. I use actually Elements, Adobe Elements for my photo editing. Photoshop has always been overkill for me. I'm a hobbyist photographer. I do most of the photography on Windows Central. But I always like, if I have to spend more than 5 minutes editing a photo, I didn't get the shot. Why am I trying to squeeze blood from the stone, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to sit there. I de-dust, I improve contrast, sharpen a little bit, maybe blur something out. But that's 5 minutes. That's most I'll ever spend on a photo. So Photoshop's been overkill for me, which is why I don't run it. Elements does that. It allows me to do all that. Even Elements is almost overkill. So I'm hoping Elements comes over to ARM, but probably, again, even a less of a priority. But if it doesn't, maybe I'll do Photoshop. I don't know. But Photoshop is still Adobe Cloud, right?
Yes.
So like you can't just buy Photoshop beta. Right?
Yeah, that's a good point. No, I don't think you can. Yeah, I think you got to subscribe to it, which is the kicker. But that's
and how much is it a month?
It's a lot. Creative Cloud is not cheap. Oh, I think you can get Creative Cloud with just Photoshop, and I think that's reasonable. But yeah, if you want,
I think it was like $10 a month, wasn't it?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. For something
but you can get it through our company anyway. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll have to.
That's what I do anyway.
We'll have this conversation.
Yeah, but yeah,
we used to be able to do that. I don't use the Creative Cloud stuff. I don't care about video anymore. I don't, So
see, but I still do video, so that's what I really, really want to see. Premiere Pro, and in addition After Effects, because like I said, we have some After Effects
because the GPU on the Pro X is actually very powerful.
Yeah,
it's a powerful GPU. We don't see a ton of things leveraging it yet, which is the issue. But the GPU is no joke on that device.
Yeah.
And so it will be interesting to see how it handles video encoding when it's done native and
because
optimized.
I'll tell you what, my Surface Studio 1, the first gen, I think it's a Intel Core i7 6th generation with a GTX 965M. It cannot play back 4K video in the editor. It won't do it. It's like this is too much for me. I bet you the Pro X could. I bet you the Pro X can play back 4K video in the actual timeline.
Yeah, quickly on NVIDIA before we wrap up here. NVIDIA did their earnings this week, had a very good. NVIDIA is crushing it this last year, and they're continuing it. And they're both their biggest businesses, data centers, and of course, gaming and GPUs. My only concern with their only weak spot with GPUs right now, AMD obviously is getting there too. They're doing to, what they did to Intel, they're trying to do to NVIDIA, and they're making progress. But NVIDIA always struggled with low-end graphics, the MX series, so the MX 150, the MX 250, or the 330, whatever. I always forget they are, the MX series. The one you mentioned, the 965Ms, these were their mobile solutions that are supposed to be for laptops. So like the MX, even I forgot, is it 330 or 350? This is bugging me now. Someone look it up. But like that GPU is now slower than Intel Xe graphics. So like, why would you ever go with an NVIDIA discrete GPU in an Ultrabook when you could just use Intel Xe and get more performance and all, So I'm curious about how NVIDIA answers that, and as well with their ARM's holding acquisition, if they start to get back to GPU with ARM architecture as well, which could benefit Qualcomm. And Qualcomm's in the past has not wanted to go down that path. So that's going to be an interesting story to watch, but all this competition is good. It's going to result in better products, but there's a lot of uncertainty as well. So, all right. Well, I say that does it all. That's been a pretty party podcast. Oh, exactly. 1 hour and 35 minutes. Perfect. We're going to do Q&A now with the audience. If you guys have questions, fire them off, whether we talked about the topic or not. So you can feel free to ask, and we'll do that for about 20 minutes or so. If you're listening to this recorded, you don't get to hear that, but you're free to join us every Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern time on YouTube/Windows Central. You can join the video chat as well as the live chat there. Always a good time to have. As always, thanks for the people showing up live, though, to this podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at Daniel_Rubino. I'm still in Twitter locked out. Yeah, there's been a little bit of progress. I've had people tell me at Twitter that my case has been escalated. I put in quotes because I still haven't heard anything. But hopefully it's coming to an end. You can follow that story I wrote about on Windows Central. But you can follow Zach at ZACBOWDEN, and he'll answer your questions there as well. And until then, we'll see you next time. Oh, next week's actually Black Friday. And next week's a holiday, technically, right? But we'll still do a podcast if you're up for it, Zach.
Sure. I mean, I'm not celebrating Thanksgiving.
Well, it's Black Friday. Technically not a holiday. It's post-Thanksgiving. So,
okay.
So we can all celebrate how we all have COVID, apparently, because that's what's going to happen. Anyway, so wear a mask out there, folks, and wash your hands. Take care of each other. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
No thing of the week. Oh, yeah. Thanks for reminding us, Solid. Too late. Should have said 5 minutes ago. That's all right. We'll do 2 next week. I don't think I had a thing of the week anyway.
I kind of did have one, but I forgot the name of it.
We'll save it for next week. Don't tell us.
Okay.
Do you have any x5 Cloud for x86-64 Windows? Yes, it's a universal binary, so it works on ARM ARM x86 or 64.
I'm going to put in our to-do thing of the week.
What happened to the Windows Central app on Windows 10? It's not pulling new stories. Yeah, we've received we've received reports of that. I have submitted it to our dev guru. We'll see what he has to say about it. But so the app has never been mine or Dan's thing. We've never been in charge of it. We've never been able to. Or at least we haven't in the last few years. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's just not a priority for the team that handles the apps for the sites that we have under our company. I've reached out to the team, but I have a feeling it's going to be, just a shrug emoji. If you want to read the websites, go to windowscentral.com and
run an ad blocker.
And I'm glad you said it. I didn't say it. Dan said it. But also use read mode. There's a reading mode in Edge, and it's great. Immersive Reader.
Sure.
Does a really good job. God, Microsoft to do. Can you shut up? Oh my God, I can't stop them. There's so many.
What's going on?
You closed all the things and to do, and it started popping up. I didn't have focus assist on. Yeah.
Self-satisfying.
Can you guys hang up a call on the Surface Duo? There's an issue with the phone app. Yes. So if you're on the November update, I've noticed it as well. Sometimes the actual buttons in the phone app when you're on a phone call, like the hang up button or the keypad button or the speaker button, just doesn't work. I've noticed it too. I don't know if it's an issue specifically with the app or if something changed in the firmware. But yeah, I've noticed it. I'm sure Microsoft is aware of it as well. The only way I've noticed is to do a restart, which I know isn't helpful if you're been on hold for 20 minutes. But yeah, it's kind of an annoying bug. You're right.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet. The only one I've experienced is switching sometimes to speaker on. Is my Twitter account still hijacked? Yes, it's not really hijacked. It's my theory. The only explanation is that someone with access to Twitter's tools, their account management tools, has disabled my 2FA and removed my email and phone number, which caused the system to lock the account for security reasons, demanding a password reset. But since I don't have an email or phone number anymore with the account, it can't initiate a password reset. So the account's basically in limbo. There's no way someone hacked my account externally. It's impossible. I literally did everything you're supposed to do for security to new levels. Something's going on with Twitter. I'm being targeted. Who knows? Kind of don't care. I haven't been bugging people about it because I've been getting way more work done. And, there's something to be said about signing off on social networks and having a more sane life. So that's fine with me. How you guys advocate for ad block on your own site? Um, I find this conversation weird. Like, who doesn't use ad blocks on web browsers? Microsoft builds it into Edge mobile. It's like on iOS and Android, if you didn't know, Edge has the ability to run an ad blocker built into it. I don't know what this secret is. Like, it's not like, yo, did you hear there are ad blockers now? Like, um, it doesn't surprise me people use. I use an ad blocker not for Windows Central, for every other site because I feel the same way. Um, it's a terrible system. There's no way of defending it, and I feel it's weird that listen, if you really want to support Windows Central, next time you buy an accessory, next time you buy a laptop, next time you buy a video game, buy it through Windows Central. That is, go to our article on it, click the link to take you to Amazon, and we'll get an affiliate revenue there. I think that's a more honest way of making money, and we actually do make a significant amount of money that way, because after all, we're recommending a product to you, and if you're happy with it, why not? Why shouldn't we get a cut, right? I don't like ads. I think it's a terrible way that the internet has been happened. But everybody decided back in the mid 90s to make everything free. News, they're just gonna put everything free on the web. And so now they're like years later going like, shoot, we should have, I mean, Twitter is free. Twitter should not be free. Facebook should not be free. Those should be subscription services.
Yeah.
Like, but now Twitter is like, how do we make money on this? We have 180 million users, but we'll run ads and target things. Same with Facebook. But those you should be paying $5 a month for Twitter and then have no ads, and that should be it, right? But once you design a system, it's hard to walk that thing back. So
you can't be a paid service in a farm of free services because it just doesn't work.
I mean, we're seeing it with HBO, and like a lot of TV stuff is moving towards this. And it's actually, listen, HBO Max, I think HBO Max is actually worth the money. Like they're bringing shows and movies and stuff. I'm actually happy with the content. So, but let's not pretend that people don't use ad blockers. It's the number one thing installed on all extension web stores for browsers. Like, so you do what makes you happy. I don't care. I don't get paid based on ads personally. So.
What do you think are Panos' goals with Windows 10 and 10X outside of Sun Valley? I think his goal is, and I think he said this himself, he wants people to go from needing Windows to loving Windows. And I think that's his goal, right? And however he gets there, I think that would be mostly through improving the UX and just making Windows more intuitive and shaking the stigma that Windows has, because I think Windows has a reputation, right? It crashes a lot, it's slow. It's ugly in some cases, lots of legacy around it. I think Panos wants to sort of shake that reputation as best he can. Obviously, he won't be able to drop all of it. But yeah, I think that's his goal. And just improve Windows for tablets, for Surface, right?
321 Bluff says Windows operating system will die within the next few years because it's so less efficient and eats battery with no performance gain. 321 Bluff, I'll call your bluff. Let's make a bet on it. $500. $500 says you're wrong. And in the next few years, Windows doesn't die, or at least it's going to definitely evolve into a cloud operating system and everything like that. But I'm pretty confident. Someone actually already answered you saying businesses and enterprises rely heavily on Windows, more so than ever. As I mentioned, 7% of all PC sales are Macs. 7%. If you think that's going to change in the next few years to reverse so that Apple is 93% of laptop and PC sales and Windows is 7%, $500. Put it on the line. Otherwise, you're full of crap. And there's a reason why I have this job and you're not behind this video right now.
All right, Dan, calm down. How's the progress of Windows OEM adopting Force Touch trackpads? Any news on that front? I don't think so.
Yeah, so a couple of Lenovo's are coming out with a Force touchpad.
Oh, nice.
Yes, they were announced. There are some of the Yogas. I haven't gotten anything from Lenovo yet regarding reviews for devices, including X1 Fold, although we're inquiring about that. We'll be doing the X1 Fold one way or the other. So and then a Huawei, I think, has that, but a Huawei laptop in 2020 is kind of hard to get your hands on. I mean, it's really stinks because I like the laptops a lot, but the US PR for that is basically dried up, right? So that's a story to watch. I think it's gonna be kind of like the 3x2s and 16x9s. I've been saying for years you're gonna see companies move towards that. I've teased Lenovo. Lenovo has a new one that's coming out that does I think 3x2 or it's a 16x10. It's one of those. HP is already starting to go there now. That's Spectre. Dell's already there. So, but it's taken years, right? So, the Force touchpad stuff, you're going to start to see companies adopt it. We're going to get feedback on it. I don't know how they could be terrible, right? We'll wait to see how they are. Or I could use it maybe the most amazing thing. And as companies get feedback, you'll start to, hopefully you guys too will put pressure on companies to be like, hey, put force feedback onto this, because I do believe that's the way to do a trackpad. I think movable physical trackpads is weird in 2020. I don't think that should be a thing.
Is 10x an opportunity to stream legacy apps and not worry about backwards compatibility? Yeah, in some cases. I mean, Cloud PC will be there for you when you need to run a legacy program on 10x. But if you're anticipating needing to run legacy programs on 10x or legacy programs on that device, then you should be getting it with Windows 10. Like 10, that would be like buying a Chromebook and expecting to run desktop applications. People don't do that. You would buy a Chromebook because you want to use the web and you're going to be using the web browser for the most part. That's what 10x is kind of being positioned as. The Cloud PC being able to stream legacy programs on the cloud is there as a fallback for in that rare case where you actually need to run something, to do something real quick. It's not there to be used all the time, I don't think.
Do you think the next 12th gen Intel chips will wipe the floor with Apple's M1 and future chips from Apple? I would not. I do not feel comfortable making that. Yeah. First of all, I don't know anything about the 12th gen stuff. I don't follow the rumors of Intel and AMD as closely as like laptop stuff. So I don't know what the rumors are there. I think you can't dismiss Intel or AMD here, regardless of how good the M1 chips are. AMD especially. AMD has proved like they kind of came out of, I don't want to say nowhere. They've always been there, right? But around 2014, 2015, we weren't talking about AMD, both in desktop and especially in laptops, right? Now, 2020, legit player. They've literally hammered Intel in desktop and server and are now making big inroads in laptop. And it's because of the outstanding work they've done on chip design, right? So, I know everybody always says Intel is getting destroyed here, but like AMD, like what about AMD? Like AMD has a ton of potential. Their GPUs now are coming online, are starting to challenge NVIDIA's stuff, their latest RTX series. Like, this is what competition's about. And that said, listen, the Intel 11th gen stuff is good. It's really good. Like, it's not as fast as the M1. I get that. And there's definitely room for improvement. But I don't think the margins between these chips are as great as people want to necessarily think. And another way of putting that is I don't think these are insurmountable challenges from these companies. And same with Qualcomm. We've seen with Qualcomm the evolution of Windows on ARM. The first chip was literally just another Snapdragon chip tuned slightly higher because you have more thermal space and slapped in a device, right? And then came another chip, the 55, was an 850, that was even a little more customized. And now we're getting into the 8CX. The 8CX is actually built more for PC. So you're seeing this evolution, this shift but they need roadmaps, or they need time to build these things out. It takes a long time to build a chip. So who knows what Qualcomm has waiting? You would think that they would have, a very powerful chip waiting, even for, they never really talked about pushing to desktop or like mini PC stuff, right? They've never talked about that, but there's no reason why they couldn't, given, the opportunity. So I think it's an interesting space to watch. I don't think, as good as the M1 is, as I said, it won't directly affect PC sales, Windows PC sales. If you're an enterprise, you need a Windows laptop, whether whatever processor it runs. That's just the truth of it.
Is Microsoft working on an SQ3? Do you have any info? We have no info, but I'd be surprised if they weren't planning to do an SQ3 at least. I mean, it would likely be once again a customized version of whatever the latest ACX chip at the time. But yeah, I'm sure with the next Surface Pro X there'll be an SQ3 inside it.
I really do hope, like I said, I don't know anything about Qualcomm in terms of roadmaps. We may find out something in December. That's usually when Qualcomm announces stuff. It would be cool. It'd be really, I'd love to see them come out with like a 9CX or like a legit next gen chip that actually is like, because right now they've always been like, ours is fast as an 8th gen. It's always been like a generation behind a Core i5, right? But the 11th gen Intel crushes Qualcomm right now. It really does. And the battery life has also gotten so good where it's like it's sort of taken away some of the benefit of ARM. But as Zach pointed out, his Pro X, you couldn't do that with Intel, right? And so there are limitations here. But I really do hope to see Qualcomm like bring a real baller chip to Windows PCs, because that'd be cool. And you combine that with x64 support and then native Photoshop. I mean, that becomes a very attractive platform, but it's a journey,
Any word on the 64-bit emulation for the Pro X? Unfortunately not. Microsoft did say that it would be November, but they have just announced that they will not be doing an insider build next week, which means
Thanksgiving,
it won't be November. So I guess we'll have to wait and see when it shows up. Could be December, could even be January at this point, because a lot of people at Microsoft take December off because it's the holiday.
Oh yeah, I'm taking a week off in December.
Yeah, see? And Dan doesn't even work for Microsoft.
Podcast because I'm an idiot. I'm taking the first week of December off, and I already have like 2 meetings scheduled.
What is wrong with you? Stop.
I have 2 meetings, and I have 2 meetings scheduled and a review due. Vacation.
What's going on? This isn't a vacation.
Listen, because if I just get 2 days of doing nothing, that's a vacation for me.
Why? Just wondering, Zach. Why don't you use your Surface earbuds also as opposed to your wired earbuds? Because I am producing the podcast and I need to be able to hear things. And unfortunately, Windows just is terrible at Bluetooth. And I'm already using a wireless Bluetooth mouse and keyboard, so adding the earbuds will just destroy that connection. And also, for some reason, if I'm using the Bluetooth headphones, I can only hear Dan through the really low quality, like hands-free audio, and I need to be a bit high quality, because otherwise you guys can't hear it, and it gets into all this weird stuff. So I just have to use it wired, because it eliminates all of that. And I wish I could use them, but and I do normally use them when I'm not streaming and stuff. It's just for the podcast I have to use wired headphones.
Oh, this is a good one. So it looks like Surface Laptop 3 lower end models are all sold out everywhere, minus the Alcantara models that nobody wants, evidently. So sad. To your face. I'm Team Alcantara.
I know you are. You're dying on that hill.
That yep. Should we expect... Hey, I respect people who don't want it. I get it. But I love it.
You respect most people?
I respect the people who don't want Alcantara.
Yeah.
Not most people. Should we expect more in stock, or is MS getting rid of inventory? It's a really good question, because, Zach, do you want to?
I'm hearing January, so I guess they're getting rid of what they've got to make way for whatever coming next. That's not confirmed. I haven't been able to confirm that date just yet. I know I'm more confident on the new Pro being in January, less confident on the Laptop 4, but I have heard new hardware January, and Laptop 4 is probably going to be part of that.
Oof, Laptop 4 with 11th gen.
Yeah, and even AMD, like the better AMD chips as
Ryzen.
well. Yeah.
Yep. I'm here for that.
And a black Surface Go 2 with the same processor.
Right. Yeah, I'm not into the black stuff anymore.
No,
I know
neither.
That sounds racist.
Me neither.
That sounds really racist.
No, I agree. I'm not into the black surfaces because there's too
many fingerprints.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the Surface Pro 8, if that gets Intel 11th gen, will be real interesting, because it mirrors the battery bump I've been seeing on the XPS, 2 XPS laptops. If they can squeeze out just an hour or two, if you just get an extra hour or two on the Pro, that's that's the sweet spot. That's all you really need, right? That like 8 hour mark,
Mhm.
8 maybe 9 hours if you're lucky. Like if you could do that on the Pro instead of like a Core i7 or a fanless Core i5, that is, and you're also getting like graphics that are like,
Yeah.
was it 20 or 30% better? Uh, that's awesome. That's where and if they just thin out the bezels just a little bit, 8 inch, 12.7 inch display,
Yeah.
they just did that. That's a killer device, but still no LTE. But maybe LTE, right?
There could be an LTE model. Yeah, I have heard the Pro 8 might have LTE, which is nice.
That would give my Pro X a run for its money.
Is there any chance tablet mode in Windows 10 will be at least half as good as Windows 8's one? Not for me. If you're hoping for like a start screen again, like Windows 8, that's not happening. But from a fluidity / gesture perspective, I think it could give Windows 8 a run for its money. I've not seen too. I've started to hear things, whispers about what they're planning for Sun Valley, but it's hard to sort of. It's hard to have someone describe something to you, and then you have to try and figure out what that would look like in your own head, because there's a lot of different, obviously, variables at play there. So I need to see a lot of this in action, which I haven't done yet. Once I see it in action, then I'll be able to talk more to whether or not it's better or worse than Windows 8. But I think Microsoft are trying to, at the very least, improve the fluidity of the touch interface and the touch experience with gestures and just fluid animations and stuff. When will we see a Surface Go with 10X? Hopefully in the spring, but I doubt it. I would love to see a Surface Go with Windows 10X. I think it's made for that. And the Surface Laptop Go. I think both of those devices are easily 10X devices. But we'll have to wait and see. I know Microsoft said there won't be a mid-gen upgrade for the Series X, but do you think there's going to be a slim version just like the 360 Slim and the Xbox One S Slim? Well, if history is anything to go by, yes. I think there will almost certainly be an Xbox Series X Slim or just an all-digital edition that's a bit smaller. I think that's also entirely possible. But yeah.
Dan, what do you like more about the Pro X compared to Pro 7? ARM LTE or design, less bezels? It's both of those. If a laptop has LTE, I'm way more likely to prefer to use it. My own personal space. So I've always liked the EliteBook 1040s. I just think they're awesome looking, and the keyboards are great, and like they're just cool. So this one has LTE in it, which I've requested to HP. I'm like, listen, if you have stuff with LTE, could you ship that? Because I like testing it. And that's just the way I am. So it's not that I need it all the time. I only need it for like that 10%, right? But that 10% is kind of critical. It's cool to have that ability. So definitely the LTE, the performance. It's always, the LTE works a little bit better with ARM devices because it's like built onto the chip, right? It's part of that system. Whereas with other PCs, they're using like an Intel modem or a Qualcomm modem, and it has to work together. But it's also the design that, as Zach showed with his, it's super thin. It's thinner than a regular Surface. It's completely fanless. There's no vents on it. It feels and looks like an iPad in terms of quality and its balance. You do have the bigger display. I'm not a young spring chicken anymore, so I do prefer, given the 13-inch with thin bezels versus a 12.3-inch with thick bezels. Yeah, I'm taking the larger one because it just looks better. And it's actually got a better web camera too, which again, I'm not using that often, but the few times I need to use it, I'm glad it's there. I like the pen built into the drawer because I'm not a heavy pen user. 90% of the time, do not need it. That 10% though, I'm glad it's not stuck to the side. It's in my bag somewhere. It's just right there, fully charged, ready to go. It's just an awesome device. Again, the Pro series, the Pro 7, the Pro 8 could ape a lot of that. And that's where the competition is going to be in, right? So that's kind of fun. But that's the answer.
All right, a couple more questions and I must head off. Do you use the Surface headphones too? I do. I love these things. These are great for traveling, which I haven't really done much of this year. But even just if you're at home and you want to just have like an hour or so of like intense work, put these on with the noise cancelling and you are good to go. They're really nice. I really like them.
I like them too. Unlike Zach, though, I don't get to use them as much as I'd like to when I'm not traveling at all anymore.
Yeah.
I also like the Razer Opus. I think those are really great headphones.
What's the deal with the Microsoft Pluton processor? So this isn't that interesting to us normal folk. It's essentially a replacement for Microsoft's Trusted Platform module, which was a security chip that was separate from the CPU. What Microsoft Pluton is that sort of thing, but it's embedded into the CPU now, and they're working with Intel, AMD, and Qualcomm to integrate that security into the CPU. And I think that makes it more difficult for attackers to circumvent and get into the system and stuff. I haven't read too much into it.
Yeah, it's a uniform solution.
Yeah, it's an enterprise / security thing. It's not something that I'm interested in, or Dan, or I don't think most people listening are interested in. If you're interested in it, you should listen to another Microsoft podcast because I'm sure they've talked about it.
Is there a chance we'll see the Surface Studio monitor sold by itself? There have been some rumors, but nothing completely firm, right, Zach? Or
yeah, there were rumors. I don't know what's going on with the Studio 3 at this point. I don't know what's happening with the Studio 3. It's been ready for a while. I don't know if it's ever going to be sold because I don't know. The Studio's just not. It doesn't sell, does it? It's a very niche product, so they don't need to update it all that often. So. I would love to see a monitor, though. Yeah, you're right. I think they should definitely do a monitor. If they could do a Surface monitor, I would go back to a tower PC.
What do you listen to when writing or doing work? My breathing.
Yeah, Dan doesn't listen to music. He's weird.
Nope. I listen to music in the car and when I'm exercising. That's it. I find music distracting if I'm writing. Can't do it. I don't like music playing in the house. Sorry.
Apology accepted.
Yeah, that trick I was telling my girlfriend about. I was just like, that's such a good. When you say sorry, so that's what you do, right? Like, apology accepted. It's like, damn it, that's not what I meant. So she said sorry then. It's such a great way to rile people up.
Yeah. Do you suppose
any chance of you guys?
Sorry, go on, Dan.
Any chance of you guys getting Panos on the podcast?
Yeah,
we'll try it again.
Good luck with that.
Ping him on Twitter. Be like, hey, Panos, you should go on the Windows Central podcast and have like 100 of you guys do it. And then maybe
then he can't say no.
Yeah. I don't think, part of it's he's busy. Part of it is like we're not
he did have a couple of weeks there where he was parading different media outlets and sort of having interviews and stuff when the Duo and that whatnot launched. But we were never invited, so...
Although he does follow me on Twitter.
And me. He follows me on Twitter too. He sometimes likes my tweets.
Yep. Someone's asking about the i7. Oh, is the Surface Pro 7 i3 faster than the Surface Pro 4 i5? Yes. I'm going to say yes. I don't honestly know. If you go look at my review for the Surface Pro 7, I don't have the i3 benchmarks. You can look them up. You can look up Geekbench for that Core i3 model and compare it to the Pro i5. It probably is. The problem with the i3, I believe that's still dual core. The big difference is when you go to the i5, you're getting the quad core. That makes a huge impact on performance. That's really kind of what people want. I forgot they made the i3.
All right, last question, and I do have to go. It's 20 to 10 in the night here. Come on now. Do you prefer using Bing or Google? So I prefer using Google, and that's mostly habit, but also because Bing in the UK just is not as good. It's not as accurate as it is in the US. I know Bing is actually pretty fine in the US, but more often than not, if I'm searching for something on Bing in the UK, it will not find what I'm looking for. Or if it does find it, it's really far down compared to Google, which is the first option.
Yeah, I use Bing. I have 230,000 Bing reward points. I'm a hardcore Bing user. Love it. Use everything. But it's because I'm in the US. So.
Great. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Friday. Follow me on Twitter. I'll keep you updated on when we go live and all that good stuff. Dan would also, but he's not on Twitter right now. So, all right. We will see you next week, guys. Bye-bye.